Good afternoon, members. We have already formed a quorum. It is also time to start. Our scheduled time to start is 2:30 p.m., so I declare the meeting open. Item 1, matters arising. Report by the Chairman on her meeting with the Chief Secretary for Administration. I do not have anything special to report to you. Item 2, business arising from previous council meetings. Legal Service Division report on bill referred to the House Committee in accordance with Rule 54(4). Road Tunnels Government Amendment Bill 2017. Legal Advisor, please give us a brief introduction in relation to paper LS 98/1617. Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the bill is to take into account the expiry of the franchise of the Texcan Tunnel on the 11th of July 2018, so that it become a government tunnel. The bill also seeks to incorporate the existing tolls chargeable in respect of TCT into the Road Tunnel Government Regulations 368A. The Transport Panel was consulted by the government on the 19th of May 2017. Members passed a motion in relation to the toll levels of the TCT. We have already written to the government to clarify certain legal points. Members may want to set up a bills committee to look at the policy issues. Members, do you want to set up a bills committee? Yes, Mr. Lam Chuk-ting. Any members wishing to join the committee? Mr. Lam Kin-fong? No. All right, the Secretariat will circulate paper to find out who is interested. Item 3, Legal Service Division report on subsidiary legislation gazetted between the 7th of July and the 22nd of September 2017. This covers 8 items of subsidiary legislation. I would like to invite the legal advisor to give us a brief introduction in relation to paper LS 99/1617. Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, we have attached 5 reports altogether. Well, during the summer recess of the LegCo, the relevant reports have been sent out to you, and they are LS 92/1617 to LS 95/16-17 and LS 97/16-17, 8 items of them. And in fact, 2 have been submitted on the 12th of July. They are covered in paper LS 92, that is LN 140 and LN 141. And then they are in fact in relation to the following. First of all, LN 140, Pharmacy and Poisons Amendment Number 4 Regulation 2017. A substance is to be added to the schedule so as to deal with a disease concerning white blood cells. And then there will be restrictions concerning labeling and sale. On the 7th of July, that's the time when the legislation came into effect. The second item is Country Parks Destination Consolidation Amendment Order 2017 for Shunwan Country Park and also Lantau South Country Park. Well, the newly approved map will replace the original ones. Upon amendment, it means that some enclaves not already included into the country parks will then be included into Provo Cove Country Park as well as Lantau South Country Park. So both of them will be coming under the jurisdiction of the Country and Marine Parks Authority, and they will come into effect on the 1st of December 2017. So for the 2 groups. For the first one, LN 140 concerning the Pharmacy and Poisons Amendment Number 4 Regulation, no. And then for the second one, Country Parks Destination Consolidation Amendment Order 2017, again, no. All right, legal advisor, please. Yes, for the second one, and that's in relation to those gazetted between the 14th of July and 22nd of September. One of them will be tabled on the 11th of October 2017. That is Apology Ordinance Commencement Notice. The 1st of December 2017 will be appointed as the date of commencement. For Apology Ordinance, it sets out the procedures concerning tendering an apology, and the purpose is to promote apology so as to resolve disputes. And in fact, earlier on, the Legislature has already scrutinized the relevant bill. So concerning the commencement notice, any request to set up a subcommittee? No? All right. I just want to remind you that you have until the 8th of, you have the chance to amend the subsidiary legislation, and that will be the meeting on the 8th of November. And then we've also got a number of items not required to be tabled and not subject to amendment by Legislature. First of all, Tai Lam Tunnel and Yuen Long Approach Road Ordinance, Amendment of Schedule 1, Notice 2017, as well as Western Harbour Crossing Ordinance, Amendment of Schedule 1, Notice 2017. You see it in LS 93, and that's in relation to use of Tai Lam Tunnel and Yuen Long Approach Road, as well as the Western Harbour Crossing, and would like to amend the tolls to be charged. But then the current operators are also providing a concessionary rate, and therefore the legislative amendment is not going to affect the existing users. So in relation to this, these two legal notices, any request to set up subcommittees? No. All right. Please continue. Another one is about Volunteer and Naval Volunteer Pensions Ordinance, Amendment of Schedules. So please refer to LS 94. This is in relation to the proposal to increase the pensions for volunteers, naval volunteers as well. The pensions, gratuities, and other allowances. The increase is 2.1%, and this is making reference to the increase in pensions. It is deemed to have come into effect on the 1st of April 2017. For the third one, any request to set up a subcommittee? No, all right. Two other items, and LS 97, that is LS 97 concerning LN 149 and LN 150, and the regulations have been made under the UN sanctions ordinance, and this is to put into effect the UN Security Council resolutions. On the 15th of September, when they were gazetted, they came into effect. There's no need to have them tabled in the Legislature, but we do have a subcommittee to look at such legislative amendments. All right. The proposal from the LA is to refer the two pieces of documents to the subcommittee to examine the implementation in Hong Kong of resolutions of the UN Security Council in relation to sanctions. Any questions? No. All right. Thank you. Item 4. Sorry. Legal Service Division reports on subsidiary legislation gazetted on the 29th of September 2017. So LS 100, please. Thank you, Chair. For this one, it covers one item, and that is the UN Sanctions Libya Resolution 2011 Amendment Regulation 2017. And this is to implement the resolution adopted by UNSC on 29th of June 2017. And in fact, it came into effect on the 29th of September when it was gazetted. That's about sanctions against Libya. All right, the proposal is to refer the UN Sanctions Libya Regulation 2011 Amendment Regulation 2017 to our subcommittee looking at the implementation of Hong Kong resolutions of the UNSC in relation to sanctions. Sorry, Mr. Lau. In fact, I would like to set up a subcommittee to look at the subsidiary legislation concerning the country parks. Yes, Mr. Lau. would like to go back to the previous agenda item. That is for the first group of subsidiary legislation. I think we have tabled a paper for your reference. So in fact, it is the first item in the second item on the in the first group. Any others wishing to join? Mr. Joy Dick and also Mr. Gary Chen. Yes, I would like to remind members that since there is a request to set up a subcommittee, so I need to consult your consent. That on the 18th of October, I'm going to move a resolution so as to extend the period for amending the subsidiary legislation until the 8th of November. For the first item in the first group, there's no need to set up a subcommittee. So the period for amending it will expire on the 18th of October. So let's go back to the business for council meeting of the 11th of October 2017. Well, the relevant we have already sent out a draft report concerning the consideration of subsidiary legislation and other instruments. There has been no proposal to speak on such items. Now we have the Chief Executive's policy address. At the meeting on the 11th of October 2017, the CEO will deliver her policy address. And then Mr. Ma Feng-Guang is going to move a proposed resolution under Section 34(4) of the IGCO in relation to the following items of subsidiary legislation. They are all related to elections. First of all, Electoral Affairs Commission Electoral Procedure Legislative Council Amendment Regulation 2017, Electoral Affairs Commission Electoral Procedure District Councils Amendment Regulation 2017, Electoral Affairs Commission Electoral Procedure Election Committee Amendment Regulation 2017, Electoral Procedure CE Election Amendment Regulation 2017, and Electoral Procedure Rule Representative Election Amendment Regulation 2017. The purpose of the proposed resolution is to extend the period for amending such subsidiary legislation. We have already issued the preliminary agenda to members. Please note that in accordance with our previous convention, the relevant meeting will come to an end after the delivery of the policy address by the CE. Any outstanding business will be deferred to the meeting to be held on the 18th of October. We will cover the following items. First of all, Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2017, as well as two other items proposed by the administration, respectively under the Energy Efficiency Labeling of Products Ordinance and also the Criminal Procedure Ordinance, as well as the proposed resolution, as I've mentioned, to be moved by Mr. Ma Feng-Guang. Item 6. This is a question and answer session on the 12th of October 2017. It will take place at 10:30 a.m. until 12 noon on the 12th of October. Item 7, business for the council meeting of the 18th of October 2017. A. Questions. We have already arranged for 22 questions, 6 oral and 16 written. B. Bills, first reading and moving of second reading. Inland Revenue Amendment Number 5 Bill 2017 and second Supplementary Appropriation 2016-2017 Bill. At the meeting of the House Committee to be held on the 20th of October, we are going to deal with those two items. C. Government motion. Notice has been received. Members' motions. At that meeting, we are going to deal with the motions carried over from previous meetings. That is a motion moved by Mr. Jimmy Ng, another one moved by Mr. Jonathan Ho, and both are not legally binding. And then reports of those committees and subcommittees. We have got a table concerning 11 items of such documents having their period of amendment expiring on the 18th of October. If you would like to speak in relation to such subsidiary legislation, please inform the Secretariat by 5 p.m. 10th of October.
Item 8. Reports of Bills Committee and Subcommittee. 8. Report of the Subcommittee on Hong Kong Civil Aviation Investigation of Accidents Amendment Regulation 2017 and Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995 Amendment Order 2017. I ask the Chairman of the Subcommittee, Mr. Jeremy Tam, to speak. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Subcommittee has completed the scrutiny of Hong Kong Civil Aviation Investigation of Accident Amendment Regulation 2017, that is LN 115, and Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995 Amendment Order 2017 LN 116. Currently, under the Hong Kong Civil Aviation Investigation of Accidents Regulations, Cap 448B, the Chief Executive may appoint the Director General of Civil Aviation as the Chief Investigator responsible for investigating accidents or serious incidents involving civil aircraft. LN 115 amends Cap 448B to transfer the air accident investigation-related powers of the Director General of Civil Aviation to the future Chief Investigator leading the new Air Accident Investigation Authority, and to amend definitions relevant to civil aviation accident investigation and the newly added definition of serious incident. LN 116 is to amend Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995 to revise certain cross-references relating to Cap 448B. The subcommittee has held 2 meetings with the administration. Members have discussed about justification of setting up the independent authority, powers and scope of investigation of the authority, professional qualification of the chief investigator, whether the proposed new authority may refuse requests from law enforcement agencies for information related to investigations, as well as accidents involving civil and military aircrafts. Details of the deliberation are set out in the subcommittee report. The subcommittee support LN 115 and LN 116, that is the amendments contained therein. We will not propose any amendment in relation to these notices either. I ask members to note the amendment deadline of these two subsidiary legislations, that is 11th of October. Next is report of the subcommittee on rules of the High Court Amendment Rules 2017. I ask Mr. James Toh to give us a report. Thank you. We have already completed the scrutiny of the rules of the High Court Amendment Rules 2017. The amendment rules are made by the Rules Committee of the High Court to improve court procedures and to introduce some minor changes to the rules of the High Court. The subcommittee does not plan to propose any amendments to these rules. The deliberation of the subcommittee can be found in the report. It's in great detail. Thank you. I remind members that the deadline for amendment is the LegCo sitting on the 18th of October. If members are to propose amendments, the deadline for giving notice is Wednesday, the 11th of October. Next is the position on bills committees and subcommittees. As at the 4th of October, Wednesday, there are now 14 bills committee in action. 4 of them would need to continue the scrutiny work 3 months after they have started their work. There are also 12 subcommittees under House Committee, 5 on subsidiary legislation, 5 on policy issues, and also 5 subcommittee under panel. There are 9 subcommittees on the waiting list. Item 10. Filling of a vacancy in the membership of the Investigation Committee established under Rule 49B(2)A of the Rules of Procedure in respect of the motion to censure Mr. Holton Chow. Paper number CB(114440)/16 to 17. The paper asked members to adopt the election procedure set out in paragraph 5 to elect a member to the investigation committee to fill a vacancy. According to the proposed arrangements, on the House Committee on the 20th of October, there will be an election. You all agree? Next item is item 11. Proposal from Mr. Jeremy Tam for setting up a subcommittee on issues relating to policy on industrial buildings under the House Committee bracket. Paper number CB bracket 22124/16 to 17 bracket 01. I ask members to note that under House Rules 20J2, the House Committee may appoint a subcommittee to assist the study of issues that are of public concern. Mr. Jeremy Tam has mentioned in his proposal that, the follow-up of issues related to revitalization of industrial buildings was followed up by the development panel. However, these policies involved many different government departments. In all, it was led by the Development Bureau. I'll ask Mr. Tam to consider asking the Development Bureau to follow up on his proposals. Mr. Tam, I have said it in many times that revitalization policies of industrial buildings have been discussed many times. However, these policy issues relate to different government departments. And that is one of the reasons why I want to set up a subcommittee. Well, I don't strongly object to raising the issue in a development panel. If you all are agreeable to the setting up of a subcommittee, we all know that there is a queue. We don't know when it will get its turn. If I raise the issue in the next House Committee, that means the setting up of this subcommittee will be even later than now. So I ask members to consider whether there will be other subcommittees being proposed in the meantime. Members, do you agree to Mr. Tam's proposal to set up a subcommittee under the House Committee to study policies on industrial buildings? Mr. Tommy Cheung. In relation to the setting up of the subcommittee on issues relating to policy on industrial buildings under the House Committee, the Liberal Party does not have a strong objection. We will in the end support it. It's not the case that we come to the House Committee to make a request because it straddles different government departments. I don't know whether it is better to put it in the queue under the House Committee or in the queue under the Development Panel. From my experience, if it involves several panels, then it's a different matter. If it involves only one panel, then it is better to be in the queue under that specific panel. So I don't think that it is appropriate to set up a subcommittee under the House Committee. Mrs. Virginia Ip. We do need to look into how to better use industrial buildings in the long run, but I do think that it would be better for it to be discussed under the Development Panel. I have approached the Secretary for Development to ask relevant questions. When it comes to development policies and enforcements, they involve the Secretary for Development. If necessary, we can ask the Director of Fire Services and also Housing to come to talk to us, so it would be better under the Development Panel. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, we know that this issue involves various bureaus. Say, for example, the Home Affairs Bureau when it comes to small art groups. So it will take different policy bureaus to be involved and not just the Development Bureau to decide how to revitalize industrial buildings, because revitalization itself involves different policy bureaus. So I do think that the subcommittee should be set up under the House Committee. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. When it comes to policies related to industrial buildings, the BPL is very concerned. Different issues related to industrial buildings have been discussed in different panels. Mr. Tam proposed to set up a subcommittee. We agreed to that, but we do think that the quickest way and the best way is to do it under the development panel. I think there is quite a long queue under the House Committee. If you want this matter to be dealt with as soon as possible, it would be better for it to be set up under the relevant panel. Mr. Lau Kok Fan, I support revitalization of industrial buildings, but I share other people's view it should be set up under the development panel, because the Development Bureau is our counterpart. Yes, it may involve different departments, but there needs to be one coordinating department in the end. Well, there was an issue related to old buildings. It's related to Home Affairs Bureau and as well as Development Bureau. But in the end, we went to one bureau. This issue clearly is related to the Development Bureau. It would be better for the subcommittee to be set up under the Development Panel. Dr. Kokaki, I don't see any objections to the setting up of a subcommittee. Well, you should know that not all members are members of the Development Panel. And nearly all members are involved in revitalization of industrial buildings one way or another. So if it is set up under the House Committee, then more members may get involved and the discussion will be better. If the House Committee agrees to it, then it will immediately get into the queue. In this way, more members can participate, and different development and different policy bureaus may become guests. And I think it will be more reasonable to do it this way. Mr. Andrew Wen. I think most members agree to the setting up of a subcommittee. It's just the difference in perspective. I don't know whether I heard them right or not, because they all agree that it is interdepartmental. Say, for example, development, fire services, and transport and housing. Previously, there was an issue of phasing out domestic use in industrial buildings. It also involves home affairs. If you all agree that it involves different departments, then why not under the House Committee? I have talked to the Development Bureau in relation to criminalizing against domestic use of industrial buildings. Well, I think if it is not under the House Committee, this issue will not be discussed. Ms. Claudia Mo. I think most people will agree that when it comes to industrial building, land is the prime issue. But whether it is lands, home affairs, housing, fire services, and FEHD, food and environmental hygiene because of private kitchens. And I do think that the way and different uses of industrial buildings are going, we do need a subcommittee under the House Committee. I don't know how long it will have to wait, but at least it will be the 10th in the queue. But if it goes back to Development Panel, I don't know how long the discussion will take before coming back to here? Is it the case that it is not urgent at all, that we can go to development panel before coming back? Dr. Fernando Zhang. I support Mr. Jeremy Tam's proposal.
This is because I think the policy concerning industrial buildings will cross different departments, Development Bureau, Housing, or even the Home Affairs. I think one department has been missed, that is Social Welfare Department. By clearing the tenants from the industrial buildings, many residents will be affected. The Housing Department will be involved. The Social Welfare Department should also be involved because there is the question of rehousing. So I think for the policy on industrial buildings, I think the policy would also give rise to many other issues, and therefore we need to adopt a interdepartmental approach. So I don't see any special reason to object to the idea. I think we can keep it under both committees. If you think that it is not cross-departmental enough, you don't need to worry, because it is indeed covering Home Affairs, Development, as well as, say, for example, the FSD and even the DSD will also be involved, because the department would be worried as to whether the drainage system can cope with so many occupants. So it is fine if we have it under a House Committee. What has happened is that for the artists and the occupants, if they would like to get help, then they have found that many different departments and bureaus will be involved. So I think it is very appropriate to have it under the House Committee. So how come that you don't even give it a chance to be included in your queue? So I think we need to have a subcommittee under the House Com to look at the question. Mr. Ng. I agree with Mr. Jeremy Tam's proposal. I'm grateful to him because it has a lot to do with our industrial sector. I just want to say that for the policy on industrial buildings, yes, it would affect the cultural sector, and then some have even said that maybe we can put industrial buildings to domestic use for homes for the aged. So it is a very heated argument. I think it has also a bearing on whether we can implement reindustrialization. Under reindustrialization, of course, we may have to correspond with the CDB, and then for innovative industries, we need to talk to the Innovation Technology Bureau as to which committee it should come under. I'm not as experienced as others, but I would like to have it done ASAP. Two other members would like to speak. In fact, three. If nobody else indicates, then I will draw a line. Mr. Ma Fengguo. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also very concerned about this matter. Indeed, it is cross departments. I don't disagree with Mr. Tam. It involves at least 4 bureaus: Home Affairs, THB, Development Bureau, as well as the Security Bureau. So I would suggest that we have joint panel meetings, and that means that we can get to it more quickly, because it takes a lot of time to get to our turn if it is to be put into the queue under the House Committee. So can we explore the idea of having joint panel meetings? Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Speaking from my experience, well, we do have a lot of topics involving different departments and panels. To me, the fastest route is for this committee to address it. We can adopt a number of modes. We can either invite other panel members to take part, or we can have a joint panel meeting. For a subcommittee to be set up under the House Committee, it takes time to get to the turn in the queue. So I suggest that other panel members can be invited to join hands with the Development Bureau to call a joint panel meeting. Mr. Edichu, a number of functional constituency members have spoken, so you can see that it involves many departments and bureaus. Under the House Committee, if we set up a subcommittee, then it means that we can allow stakeholders to come to a public hearing, and then on one single occasion they can talk to the relevant departments. Now, the Development Bureau would like to talk about regulatory control, and then for Home Affairs, it means that there is a request to have creative industries there, while others would like to have reindustrialization. So it's better to have it under the House Committee. Why don't we agree to the existing proposal? As to whether it should be taken up again by a panel, I think we can have it done in parallel. Mr. Charles Mock. Well, I think it's related to innovation technology as well. We do see a lot of problems encountered by data centers housed in industrial buildings. Now, a lot has been said as to why it shouldn't be formed under the House Committee. Some have said that it should be dealt with by the Development Panel, but obviously it takes more than that. And many members have spoken. If there's a way to gather together a few panels so that we can get to it more quickly, then why don't you consider my point? Now, Mr. Edichi has said that we should support the current proposal first so that we can join the queue. Now, unless the pro-establishment camp is to object to it, I'm afraid whether there will be some delaying. I would like to have it done ASAP. 16 members have spoken. If I may provide some information to you. First of all, every time at a House Committee meeting, I will inform you that members have many areas of concern and you would like to set up a subcommittee. Now, for this particular case, it will be in a queue of 10, and it will be the 10th committee. We don't actually have two queues. Well, in accordance with our practice, there will be one single queue for subcommittees to line up. Just now, someone suggested that maybe we should hold a joint panel meeting. Well, after electing the relevant panel chair, I think you can raise the proposal at the relevant panel meeting. The panel chair would certainly take it up. Now, we're still having the nomination or the membership nomination open. If you're interested in any panel, you can join the, say, development panel. No one has actually spoken against the setting up of a subcommittee on industrial buildings. It's a matter of where it should come under. I think it is quite obvious that the Development Bureau will be taking the lead. Others would like to have a joint panel meeting. Now, I would like to point out that policies are getting very complex. Even though we may have a leading policy bureau, the experience of having previous meetings is that we can always invite officials from other bureaus to attend our meetings and answer members' questions. It can always be done. So, Mr. Tam, would you like to consider your position? Would you insist on having this set up under the House Committee? If so, I think we can, of course, deal with your sort of position. You have 1 minute. Well, many members have agreed to set up a subcommittee. As you have said rightly, Madam Chair, we have only one single queue for all the subcommittees. In other words, we are not having a separate queue for a subcommittee to be formed under the development panel. Now, if we are to set it up today, then we are in the at the 10th in the queue. If we wait for the development panel to start the meetings first, then by the time we join the queue, we may no longer be the 10th in the line. So I hope members will agree to have it set up under the House Committee. If I may clarify one more point for you. Now, at a development panel meeting, if members agree to set up a subcommittee, you don't need to come back to the House Committee. But still, there's only one single queue for all the subcommittees. please help. We do have a panel or committee system. When it is obvious as to which bureau or which panel should be involved, we'll always refer the matter to that particular panel. But then Mr. Tam insists on having it here. So anybody having strong views, should it be put to the vote? Yes, I claim a division, said Mr. Tommy Cheung. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes. Well, the question that we're voting on is as follows. Do you agree with Mr. Jeremy Tam that is under the House Committee? We are to set up a subcommittee on issues relating to policy on industrial buildings. So if you agree to the question, it means you are in agreement with Mr. Tam that is to set up a subcommittee under the House Committee, and vice versa. But it doesn't rule out the possibility that he will seek the approval to set it under the development panel. So the question has been put on the screen for your reference. Dr. Helena Wong, can you clarify what you said? Does it mean that we can do it in parallel? That is, we queue up under the House Committee. We also try to queue up under the Development Panel. No, that's not the case. Even when the question is vetoed at this House Committee meeting, you can try again at a meeting of the Development Panel.
現在
The issue is Mr. Tam's proposal for setting up a subcommittee on issues relating to policy on industrial buildings under the House Committee. Voting begins. Please press the present button before you vote, before you cast your vote. Please check your vote before I announce the result. Any questions? Voting closes. I ask the clerk to display the voting result. 22 for, 19 against, and 17 abstention. So the proposal is carried. I now ask members to signify whether they would like to join the subcommittee. If you wish to, the Secretariat will circulate papers. If you signify now, your names will be recorded. Any members who would like to indicate now that they would like to join the subcommittee? Mr. Jimmy Ng, Mrs. Regina Ip, Ms. Tanya Chan, Mr. Jeremy Tam, Mr. Andrew Lau, Edward Lau, Mr. Ray Chan, and Ms. Alice Mack. The Secretariat will circulate a paper. Now, item 12. Proposal from Ms. Claudia Mo to move a motion under Rule 49B bracket 1A of the Rules of Procedure at the Council meeting of 18th of October 2017 to censure Mr. Junius Ho. I ask members to note that on the 29th of September, Ms. Mo has given notice to the LegCo. This is still pending the President's decision whether to approve or not. I now ask Ms. Mo to speak. She will have 2 minutes, and then Mr. Junius Ho will reply. He will have 2 minutes. Thereafter, members may speak for 1 minute each. Members who would like to speak, would you please press the request to speak button? Ms. Mo. Well, if you talk about killing without mercy, people may say that, well, there is freedom of speech. Then why would some people be sent to prison? Just like freedom of the press, freedom of speech is also to some limit. If you claim to be a member of trial society, then it will be a criminal offense. If you think you're so smart, why don't you go and say that and claim that you're a member of a trial society and then claim to claim for protection behind freedom of speech? Well, if someone is penalized because of they said, it's just like in the Qing dynasty. Someone, say for example, someone in the Qing dynasty saying something that might remotely be interpreted to be criticizing those in power. In most recent case, we see that there is the Lao Xiaobo case. The English translation of what was said was to kill without mercy. Mr. Junius Ho, on several occasions, said that the word "sat" is kill. It's just like killing cats and dogs. And these people, why not kill them? So it's very clear. And he said to the press very clearly that, well, the words to kill without mercy is not to be retracted. And then later he said that the word kill means to stop. He should own up to what he has done. Don't distort what happened. And I think what is regrettable is that there is an article quoted by Ming Pao saying that the liaison office has already made telephone calls for members from the loyalist camp to stay put so that they can cast a vote to protect Junius Ho. Your time's up, Mr. Ho. I do think this is rather meaningless. Ms. Mo just now talked about being penalized because of what you've said. That's exactly what she's saying. Well, are there limits when it comes to freedom of expression? Yes, there is. The rally on the 17th of September, the theme was very clear. It is anti Hong Kong independence, idiosyncrasy, anti-cold-heartedness, and also anti-pseudo-academia, and to kick away Mr. Benny Tai. Everything was done in accordance with reason and with the law. A guest said in the rally using the word kill. And I then follow up and said kill without mercy. I did not instigate others to resort to violence. That was very clear. And that's how I felt. The theme of the rally was anti-Hong Kong independence. I swore to uphold the spirit of the basic law. Hong Kong is an unalienable part of China. Everyone in the rally was quite worked up and was quite righteously angered by the notion of Hong Kong independence. Later, in the stand-up by the press, I said that's not the same thing. Don't distort it. And I said many times, if it happened and if you put 1.3 billion mainlanders and Hong Kong and the entirety of Hong Kong's population in a difficult place, what would happen? We're talking about freedom of expression. Mr. Ip Kin Yuen, you have 1 minute. We may have different political views, but we need to learn about empathy, about sympathy, about basic human rights. We have seen in the past, say for example, some posters in the Hong Kong Education University, some people were offended by it. We're talking about a legislator in his capacity as a lawmaker in a rally openly said to kill without mercy. This is utterly unacceptable. And the influence it has can't be compared to when words to a similar effect is said by some unknown people. We may have a different political view. We need to respect humanity. We should not spread hate and violence. Your time is up. Mr. Wong Kok Kin. I think this motion to censure is a waste of time. Anyone with a rational mind will not be able to comprehend that the words to kill without mercy is to instigate killing. Some people, well, my wife sometimes use the word kill. Does it mean that I have to make a report to the police saying that she threatens me? And I do think this is just to divert the attention. Say, for example, Lam Chi Kin and the incidents of Chinese University of Hong Kong as well as the Hong Kong Education University. They just want to divert the attention from these incidents. They want to shift the spotlight onto Junius Ho. I think it's the waste of LegCo's time. It is meaningless. The FTU will not blindly follow, so we will definitely oppose to this motion. Mr. Alvin Young. And I think what is embarrassing is Mr. Junius Ho. I completely subscribe to what Mrs. Regina Ip said, that well, even for a patriot, you will have to have some wisdom. Well, if you have a teammate like that, I do feel embarrassed by the word patriot, because 1.4 billion people are represented by someone like this. What a shame. A legislator should have taste, should have integrity. And I don't think that what Mr. Ho said to the words to kill without mercy can meet such standard. And if that was said not by Mr. Ho or but by the opposition, what would happen? Police would knock on your door. And we are trying to get some justice by using this platform here. Mr. James Toh. The Democratic Party agree fully that the words to kill without mercy uttered by Mr. Ho is unreasonable and it should be condemned on a moral perspective. But does it mean that it's enough to deprive one's office in accordance with basic law? I do think that the standard for that to be happen is quite high. On a similar vein, the loyalists moved a motion to deprive Mr. Cheng Chung-tai's office for what he's done. I think Mr. Ho should reflect on what he has said and done. In view of what he said, and he continued to try to defend himself, he smirked, and that is totally unbecoming. But does it mean that his office will have to be taken away? I think that will have to be of a high standard. Mr. Leung Chi-Chung. Well, I do think people who promote Hong Kong independence is doing more harm than good to Hong Kong. Yes, someone who said to kill without mercy should be condemned. I do think Ms. Mo's motion is frivolous and meaningless, and I would like to make use of this chance to condemn Ms. Mo and her group to promote the ideology of Hong Kong independence. Mr. Yu Si-wing, I understand Mr. Ho to be saying those words vis-a-vis Hong Kong independence, and it should be nipped in the bud so that it will not spread further. But if what Mr. Ho has said is unacceptable to some people, I just think it's a difference in opinion. People have different level of acceptance. So some opposition say things that are quite radical. And if this motion to censure is carried, then it will be endless. We think that Ms. Mo's motion is unnecessary, so we will not support it. Mr. Cheng Chung-tai. Well, I faced ROP 49B, but it is not the same as that of Mr. Ho's, because mine is a political suppression and persecution. There is evidence that on that day, what he said, to kill without mercy, targeted at Benny Tai, it is criminal, and there is strong evidence. The only thing is that the Department of Justice and the police do not enforce the law. I think it is not just about what he said, to kill without mercy. It's about numerous frauds committed by Mr. Ho. During the election, he said in his promotional material that he was a practicing lawyer in the UK and in Singapore. The ICAC has already started investigation. And after he was elected, he continued to defraud the public and voters by the information on his website. So that alone suffices censure. Dr. Kokaki is not here. Mr. Holden Chow, and then Dr. Kokaki, Mr. Chow. I noticed that Mr. Ho admitted in the TV program that he has used the wrong words, and he apologized. I think he has taken on board what the public said, that he should be more careful and with the choice of his words, and that he was too agitated. And I do think we should draw a line, and we should not keep making a fuss by having this motion. And I do think this is just to divert the attention away from people who condone Hong Kong independence. So I oppose to this motion. Dr. Kokaki. Well, if in a rally you can say threatening words, well, this is the first time I hear about it. Mr. Ho was at one point the president of the Law Society, and he is a practicing lawyer in Hong Kong. He said something, and then he said, well, I just say it off the cuff. If that stands, then there won't be any cases of criminal intimidation. Because one can say, well, I'm going to kill your whole family. And then when a police officer approaches, you say, I'm just saying it without meaning it. You have to consider the person's capacity and take into account the context. It's a legislator. It's an experienced lawyer who was at one point the president of the Law Society. And if he tries to evade responsibility, that is indeed tragic.
主席 Mrs. Regina Yip, I think everybody knows that earlier on I had already criticized Mr. Ho, the lawyer. I said that his choice of words was wrong, he was too radical. But I don't think that he did intend to kill anybody or he was trying to incite violence. He did tender an explanation afterwards. I think it's a matter of a figure of speech. So he wasn't trying to incite others to wield a knife and kill. So Ms. Mo, in relation to her motion, I think that is not justified. And then for Mr. James Toh, for Article 79, I think we need to set a very high threshold if we want to remove a lawmaker. I don't think somebody should be removed from office just because of wrong choice of word. So my party and myself would object to the motion. Dr. Elizabeth Quat, thank you, Chair. All the time, I'm against the use of radical words, both inside the chamber and outside. But then everybody knows that on this occasion, as Dr. Jonas Ho himself has said, what he said didn't mean that he would like to kill somebody or he was inciting others to kill anybody. So a lawmaker used some radical words outside the chamber. I don't think that should result in a motion of censure. We've got many urgent business to attend to, and they are related to livelihood issues. For this one, I think it is very frivolous. It is a waste of time. Therefore, I'm strongly against such a motion. I won't support it. Of course, we need to continue to render support to the efforts against Hong Kong independence. I will urge everybody who are in support of this campaign against Hong Kong independence to refrain from using radical words because it is not going to do Hong Kong any good. 9 other members would like to speak on this topic. Ms. Mo has already given notice. In other words, at the electrical meeting, you still have the chance to express your views. So I will invite members who intended to speak. Please press the button to speak. Otherwise, I have to draw a line. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think for this motion to censure, I don't think it is meaningful at all. I think she's just trying to gain some political capital again. Ms. Mo talked about having a bottom line when it comes to freedom of speech. And then we've seen the spread of thoughts concerning Hong Kong independence. I hope the Pan-Democrats should adopt the same standard. You should come out and censure such pro-independence thoughts immediately so that we won't be hurt. Well, if you look at the rally that day, I think you know that what Dr. Ho and others have said weren't so much about killing anybody. And we have had a few months recess, and the policy address is on the doorstep. There's a lot for us to attend to. Let's focus on meaningful matters. So I'm against the motion. Dr. Priscilla Leung, I'm against the motion to censure. I think in Hong Kong we have different political issues. We have got rallies of all scales and sizes, and for the past 20 years we have had numerous of them. For the non-pro-establishment camp, they have always come up with outrageous remarks criticizing the CE, officials, and even the mainlanders. What is important is that the Legislative Council shouldn't waste time in this way to say that some radical words are not acceptable. That is words uttered by a colleague outside of the chamber. I don't think we should waste our time on such matters because It is said that someone has made a very outrageous remark, and so he should be censured. But what about things said here and acts done here? I think that's a different matter. Your time is up. Mr. Chen Hanpeng, it is a mockery. If you care to visit the Facebook of Miss Claudia Mo on the 27th of November 2016, and she posted a number of items on her Facebook talking about freedom of speech, etc. Now, you are saying that for those who promote Hong Kong independence, they enjoy freedom of speech. For others, they don't. Of course, to me, freedom of speech is important, but then you can't go after the wrong goals. Now, Dr. Ho would like to fight against Hong Kong independence movement. So, is there a bottom line? Do you think that the independence advocates can also enjoy freedom of speech? You can't just pick on Dr. Ho without criticizing others who promote independence. Ray Chen, I have co-signed the motion. Of course, I support Ms. Mo. It is said that it is frivolous, but most of the time, what Dr. Ho has been saying is meaningless. Most of the time, I didn't care to pay attention, but it doesn't mean that you won't be held accountable for things that are trivial. On this occasion, it is intimidating. It's inciting the mass to kill somebody. Some have said that it's an analogy, but then he has been changing his stance. On one occasion, he said that those who harbor such thoughts should be killed. And then, on another occasion, it is said that he has apologized. And then, in the third week, he has said that those who don't have a home return permit are having sympathy for Hong Kong independence. I found it very confusing. For those who have been incited by you, I think they don't know what to do. I think we have been threatened, and somebody has already reported the matter to the police. Ms. Alex Mack, someone has said that lawmakers should have taste. So does it mean that if somebody has got a criminal record, then your life is more enriched? I can't subscribe to such a position. I would rather have a life that doesn't have taste. Now, it is said that Dr. Ho has embarrassed us. But what about your friend, somebody who has got the stapler making marks on his thigh? Now, for those who are supporting such an act, why don't you censure such people? I need to tell my supporters I won't go after such things because it is too meaningless, too trivial. Our time is too precious for us to take up such matters and try to have a motion to censure. If things are not pleasing to our ears, then are we supposed to move a motion to censure? If somebody feels threatened, a report has been made and so be it. Mr. Charles Mock, Dr. Ho is still sounding very self-righteous, saying that he was just speaking his mind. He is trying to say that he has always been in the right. I think he's mixing up what is right and what is wrong. I don't think it is the occasion for us to talk about Hong Kong independence or not. It is said that somebody would like to shift the focus. Now, it is said that now Mr. Wang Guoqin has said that his wife may have said certain things to him, but certainly the conversation between the two won't be looked into by the police. I'm sorry for mixing up their names. Now, for a lawmaker to address a rally, I think it is something serious. It is a public event and it is a very serious occasion. Many members have said that we should see whether there is the intention to kill, but then that's a matter for the police investigation. We want to find out whether it is right or wrong to have said that. Mr. Xiu, Mr. Wang Guoqin has said that we are taking something frivolous very seriously. Well, on the occasion of the rally protest held on the 17th of September, I think that's not right. Now, for Benny Tai, has he ever uttered a word in support of Hong Kong independence? Has he been promoting such a movement? And then for you to say that he should be removed, was the process carried out at that rally? Or do you know that Hong Kong U has got its own procedures? Now you try to frame up a charge and try to say that and see to it that a professor from Hong Kong U will be removed from his post. I will urge the pro-establishment camp not to mess up such serious pursuits. I think you need to make a distinction between what is important, what is not. I agree with Wong Kwok Kin. That is, this is really frivolous and it lacks common sense. I think we all know that you need to look at the context when you speak. Let me cite an example. Maybe you play mahjong. Well, say for example, if you are able to combat and win all the other other players, then does it mean that you are going to kill all of them? Sometimes we say that we'd like to see the officials' heads roll. Does it mean that we want to kill them? So it all depends on the background, the context. Now, Dr. Ho, I know that at that time he was really angry. He was self-righteous. He was righteous. He was against cold-bloodedness. He was against Hong Kong independence. He was against pseudo-academia. I agree with him. But of course, maybe he should mind his words. But I don't think there should be a motion to censure. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, there's no room for Hong Kong independence. For what Mr. Ho has said, he said, kill without mercy. I think that's what he means. Ms. Claudia Mo, your motion is most absurd. Well, something has gone viral on the internet. Somebody has been using abusive words numerously. Does it mean that, according to Ms. Mo's logic, that person should be charged for rape? Mr. Martin Liu, according to the media report, what happened on that day was that there was a clear theme for the rally, and it is against Hong Kong independence, and there's a request to sack Benny Tai from his Hong Kong U post. Now, it is about something which is serious. It is about right and wrong. So Dr. Ho would like to ask the Hong Kong U to take the matter seriously, because on the Hong Kong U campus, he was openly inciting the young people to support Hong Kong independence. Dr. Ho has said that it was unfortunate for him to choose the wrong word. He wasn't advocating Hong Kong independence, so he was being emotional. He's chosen emotional words. I don't think anybody would take it to mean that he intended incitement or violence. If somebody has chosen the wrong word, or he had a slip of tongue, and then we start to have motions to censure, then we're getting this every week. Your time is up. Dr. Zhang. Today, we can see how the pro-establishment camp can distort the logic. Everything has been messed up. Now there is a lawmaker, and he organized an event, and the purpose was to sack a professor from the university. Now somebody talked about kill, and then you try to echo him and saying that it should be done without mercy. When the media asked you what you meant, then you even went on to say that for such people, they should be killed. You could kill dogs and pigs. Now, Mr. Ronnie Tong said that maybe you have breached the public order ordinance. Now your response was that if we don't kill them, what else should we do? Are you saying that this doesn't mean anything at all? Does it mean that it is something not meaningful? Now, we do have a bottom line for us to be lawmakers and university teaching staff members. Mr. Eddie Chu. Now, regarding the kill without mercy, as well as what he has said afterwards, I think Dr. Ho owes us an apology. He spoke for 2 minutes, but he didn't mean that at all. He was simply saying that on that occasion, he was simply focusing on anti-Hong Kong independence, and he said that we shouldn't exaggerate the matter. Now, if the pro-establishment camp incites violence, do you think that there is this sort of atmosphere? I would say that indeed we are seeing this happening. Well, for Tom Grundy from the Hong Kong Free Press, I think he has received some threatening correspondence.
Well, if it is further drummed up by legislators, then this adverse atmosphere will spread, Mr. Porter. Well, I don't agree to what Mr. Junis Ho said during and after the rally. However, I also agree with what Mr. James Ho said that, what you do and what you say are completely different. And some members say that some people should go to hell, and some more serious remarks. Inside the chamber, well, there is the privilege and powers and privilege exemption. However, if you curse someone to say that they would go to hell, it is very serious. And I do think that if we have to draw a line whether it is criminal or not, I may not agree with Mr. Ho. I do think that he needs to give an apology. But if you want this council to take action and to have a literary inquisition, it is not appropriate. Mr. Felix Zhong. Legislators should be careful with what they say. But it is human to say the wrong thing. Well, sometimes. And Mr. Ho should be responsible for what he said. He said something along the lines of to kill without mercy in public. And I do think that he needs to apologize to the public so that this matter will be left at that. So I ask Mr. Ho to apologize to the public. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Well, China has a very long civilization. Every word can have its own meaning. And I do think, well, to me, well, to kill without mercy may mean to kill indiscriminately, or it may also kill, it may also mean some other things. Ms. Mo cited Article 797. Apart from misbehavior, it also mentions about the breach of oath. Let me remind you, when you take an oath, you say you would uphold the basic law and also support that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of China. And in order to do that, you should stop Hong Kong independence. Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting. Mr. Ho talked about to kill without mercy, and then said to kill dogs and cats, and then to say, well, how can you not kill these people? So if you interpret it taking into context, then if you have some level of Chinese proficiency, you won't be able to interpret it in any other way. And you may want to defend Junius Ho, but you need to focus on what was said. That is, whether it is enough to deprive him of his office. So please, don't talk about if you don't have a home re-entry permit, that means you support Hong Kong independence. My two children, aged 10 and 12, don't have a home re-entry permit, but I don't see in any way that they support Hong Kong independence. 5 more members indicated that they would like to speak after I've drawn a line. Well, there are other matters on the agenda. There is also the Finance Committee. And Ms. Mo has already given notice to the LegCo. You may have another chance to speak on this matter, so I do need to draw a line. I will ask Ms. Mo and Mr. Ho to speak. How much time do I have? 1 minute. I find it highly regrettable. You see, the loyalists are most serious in doing something meaningless. They use meaningless and trivial excuses to oppose to this serious motion, they use anti-Hong Kong independence as an excuse. They keep talking about anti-Hong Kong independence. I don't see anyone in Hong Kong doing anything to get Hong Kong independence realized. You frame the slogan used in Occupy Central, and you frame them for advocating Hong Kong independence. And then now you say, well, to kill you doesn't really mean to kill you. If it's uttered by your friend, if it's uttered by your wife, then they may not be serious. But well, it seems that it's the case of do as I say, not as I do. Mr. Ho, you have 1 minute. I find it regrettable that the opposition has elevated it to a completely different level. And they have a very low Chinese proficiency. And if you just want to be pedantic, on the 20th of September, a number of legislators held a belt with the belt buckle being the word kill, and then it's encircled in red. And then there is the picture of Genius Ho. Well, what message did you want to send out? I have made a report. Please don't shout from your seat. Ms. Mo, please refrain from speaking. Please continue, Mr. Ho. Please stick to the facts. I have explained, and I've explained clearly. I have expressed regret openly because I find it regrettable that different people interpreted it in different ways. I've already spoken. Members from different political groups have expressed their views. Please note that as per ROP censure procedures, we will have to wait for the LegCo or the investigation of the investigation committee to furnish a report, and thereafter members may ask for voting and a debate in a council meeting. Item 13, election of the chairman and deputy chairman of the House Committee for the 2017-2018 session. Now is the election of chairman of the House Committee for the session 2017-18 session. Under House Rule number 20 and also Appendix 4, well, a valid nomination has to be made orally by one member, and it has to be at least seconded by at least one member, and it should be accepted by the nominated person. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, I nominate Ms. Starry Lee. Mr. Jeffrey Lam nominated me. Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Gary Chan. I will accept. Well, since I have accepted the nomination, I now ask the Deputy Chairman to chair the meeting. Any other nominations? Mr. Kenneth Leung, I nominate Mr. Dennis Kwok. It's seconded by Mr. Alvin Yeung. I accept. Mr. James Toh, please chair the meeting. There are two nominations, and I will have to ask, are there any other nominations? I'll count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nomination closes. It will be done by secret ballot. Yes, Dr. Zhang. may we hear from the two candidates about their views and maybe give us some time to ask them questions. The other members, you all have the same view? Mr. Eddie Chu. That is in particular in relation to their stance of amending the rules of procedure. So you make a similar request? Yes. Ms. Helena Wong. I do think that the two candidates should briefly state their platform. Any other views? Mr. Yu Si-wing, I would like to ask, just to express their views without a question and answer session. Some members talked about asking questions. I would like to ask if some members think that they would like to have a chance to ask candidates questions about, say, the way to chair a meeting and the ROP. I think they're all related. Well, then our meeting will be very long. How many minutes do you give each member? I don't support that, because I remember that there is no such convention. So you don't agree with asking questions? Yes, if each member has 2 minutes, it will take us into, well, we're late into the night. Perhaps I will defer to the clerk. Under Appendix 4 of the House Rules, that is the election arrangements, there is no mention about question and answer session. However, this committee may decide, with the consent of candidates, whether to have a question and answer session. Well, there is the Finance Committee meeting coming. You may limit to the question and answer session to 15 minutes. I can tell you that last year we had the question and answer session. Mr. Yu? Well, do we need to vote on whether we would proceed with a question and answer session? Who is to set the time limit? 10 minutes? Half an hour? 1 hour? We have to decide these matters before we proceed. I think the question was for members to decide whether to have the question and answer session, or is something else? Yes, let's do it one after the other. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you. I'm 100% sure that candidates has answered questions from members, from what I can recall, at least twice before. Well, if you're afraid that the meeting will continue till late, then you should not appear in the first place. I really want to know the stance of Ms. Dari Lee and Mr. Dennis Kwok about amending the ROP. That is very important. Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Yu talked about a vote. It's a motion. It will have to be a motion. But can we move a motion to vote on certain matters in a meeting like this? I'd like to hear from the legal advisor. Because if one can move a motion to vote, then we can move a motion to adjourn. Well, if the candidates would like to stand in the election, if they are willing to answer questions, then let's set a time for them to answer questions. I see that there are still a number of members who would like to speak. If you want to ask questions, you don't have to say what you would like to ask, because 100 people may have 100 different questions. If you think there is no need to have a Q&A session, well, Mr. Yiu has made one point. This is time, and if you have other objections for a different reason, you may say so. If it's repetition, you don't need to say it.
Mr. Ted Hui, this isn't really an election forum, but rather we would like to know about the position of the candidates before we vote on the matter. Allow me to be frank. I think Mr. Lee has been unfair in conducting the meetings in the past, so I want to get an answer from her. So I want to have a Q&A session. That suffices. Mr. Martin Liao. Well, I know that this is not being provided for under the House rules. If we want to embark on this, it means that it is a departure from the House rules. So what I want to say is that if it is a departure from the rules, then you better allow us to make a decision rather than you alone deciding on the matter. All right, in this case, well, we had it in the past, so it could be regarded as a convention. According to the clerk, we did this before. Yes, please. Mr. Liao, what about the definition of having a convention? We have had it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, or 10 times before. This is a convention. Well, before it becomes the practice, before it becomes the convention of the LegCo, then you can regard it as a practice. But if it is challenged, then you'll be asked to abide by the rules and the House rules. So it is up to the House committee to make a decision. Mr. Ray Chen, thank you, Chairman. If somebody has such a view, then it means that the matter should be referred to the Committee on Rules and have the proposal decided at a full council meeting before coming back here. If somebody thinks that we can dispense with the question and answer session, then you just refrain from asking questions and leave time for others who want to ask questions. Please don't deny us the chance to put questions to the candidates. Well, no. Now, Mr. Liao is challenging the proposal. He said that if we decide for a Q&A session, it is a departure from the House rules. So it isn't a matter of somebody giving up the chance to ask, leaving time for others to ask questions. So maybe in a moment, I have to spend time on how to handle the point from Mr. Liao. Kenya Chen. Well, I don't know whether I got it right or wrong. Well, for the FC and other panel meetings, if there's no provision about that, then we have to make reference to the House rules as well as the rules of procedures. Appendix 1 talks about the election of the LegCo president, but we're having something similar because we're talking about the chair of the House committee, and from time to time the chair of the House committee will deputize for the president. And then we talk about the presiding member. So in other words, we can have a Q&A session. It is said that the candidates may speak for 5 minutes each, and then there will be an order of speaking. After that, the presiding member will invite members to ask questions, and each can ask 1 question. Can we make reference to that practice? Thank you for your point. Dr. Kiki Kwok. Please switch on the mic. Dr. Kiki Kwok. Chair, first of all, I don't think we are having something unprecedented. We did have it in the past. Even for the election of the president, we did have a session for questions and answers. Now, for us to have a smooth running of the meeting, it is fine for me if we set a time limit. But if you are to dispense with the the Q&A session, then you are rendering us into rubber stamps and will be ashamed of ourselves. Please also ask the candidates if they want and are willing to be asked questions. And then there was this challenge concerning the rules of procedures. Now, if he is right, it means that we were violating or we had violated the House rules in the past. And does it mean that Mr. Lee, who was elected last time, was not elected and has not been elected properly? Well, we need some legal advice concerning the point raised by Mr. Martin Liu. Connie, would you like to give an answer, or you need time to prepare for it? I think I can give an answer. Regarding the ROP as well as the House rules, for the election of the House Committee Chairman and Deputy Chairman, indeed, it is silent on whether there could be an election forum. However, from another perspective, you would like to have an election forum, or if you want to ask candidates questions, the rules do not forbid this. Our previous practice was we asked the candidates for their consent. If they agreed, and then election forum has been held. My view is that now members have said that before voting on the matter, they would like to get more information before they make up their mind. I think it is up to members to decide. That is, whether it is relevant and it is relevant to his or her decision making. I won't say that having an election forum before voting on the matter is a violation of the rules, because it is related to the need to get information before deciding on the vote. I think it's part of the overall procedures. Thank you. Well, let me say this again. There is still a lot to go through. Now, 5, or more than 5, 6, a few members, I put it that way. Well, if you are in support or if you are against, and if you have a general reason behind that, please don't speak. If you have a new point which hasn't been uttered by others before and you think that it can assist with our decision making, well, to be frank, after you've spoken, I need time to have a word with the legal advisor. I may need 10 minutes, say for example. I need to check whether I've got the power. If I don't, maybe I have to defer to the full council meeting, and maybe the matter has to be dealt with by having a vote on it at a council meeting. Mr. Charles Mock. Sorry, I haven't finished. Sorry. Yes, just hold it. If I may ask the two candidates, Mr. Ridley and Mr. Dennis Kwok, both of you are here. Are you willing to allow members to have a certain period of time to ask you questions? Would you like to tell us? Mr. Ridley, I'm sure everybody is concerned about the smooth functioning and efficient functioning of the meetings. I'm standing for the election. I'm happy to be asked questions, but I hope it is within a time limit because there are other matters to attend to. Mr. Kwok, I'm on this side, Chair. Sorry, I didn't see you. I had a word with Mr. Lee. We agree on the matter. We'd like to take questions, but let's have a time limit, as there is another meeting following this one. So please not dwell on this matter. If anybody has got any questions, I'll be more than happy to take the questions. All right. Mr. Liu has left. Let me ask once more. Well, he's not in the chamber. He's present. Sorry, an empty seat. I didn't say it properly. Sorry. Well, since both candidates are willing to be asked, and we have done this before. If Mr. Liu insists on challenging me, then I have to make a ruling. Now, Mr. Liu, if you do not insist, and if you withdraw your challenge, or you may take up the matter on another occasion, is it agreeable to you so that we can sort of do it more quickly? But of course, I have full respect for your sort of concern about the rules. Mr. Liu, Mr. Yu doesn't agree, but Mr. Liu is saying that he is concerned about the rules. If that is the case, I need time to think about it, because if I make a wrong decision, you can lodge a judicial review against my decision, and I think it's a serious matter. Mr. Yu, I think it's all a matter of time. If you can control the time, then it's fine for me. Well, Mr. Liu is talking about having another procedure. Sorry, I didn't know that you were referring to me. I thought you were talking about Mr. Yu and not Liu. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't and we couldn't have this session. Now, Mr. Yu has put forward such a request, and this may be a departure from the rules. It's better for that committee to take up the matter. So far, the legal advisor hasn't satisfied me. Now, Mr. Tou, you are the presiding member, and for you to depart from the rules, I don't know where you get your power. I'm still unclear. What I am concerned about is that we don't want to see the integrity of the rules being compromised. I'm just wondering whether the committee should be the better authority to deal with it. I know that it has been done before, but it wasn't challenged, and Mr. Yu has challenged. I think it was you who challenged, because you cited the House rules. Now, if you talk about a motion without notice, you still need our agreement before you can go ahead. I won't insist that the matter should be voted on before we continue. I won't insist, but I just want to remind everybody, in the light of what you have said, and to make it easier for you to answer my question, I will make it simple. As the presiding member, according to the rules, I have the power to arrange for a session of time so that colleagues can ask candidates questions and the candidates can answer them. So it isn't a matter that it requires the decision of the committee. Now, I'm making this decision. Are you going to challenge my decision? And do you want to formally introduce a motion? I'm not going to challenge the decision of your good self. And you talked about judicial review. No, I'm not going to do that. The question is, again, I won't insist on putting the matter to the vote before we go on. I just want to remind everybody of this concern. And in future, we need to find out what we should do to handle such a situation. Yes, I'm sure you can also approach the CROP. All right, I'll catch it short. There are at least 600 members who have pressed the button to speak. Having told you about my decision, for the sake of you, if you don't insist on having the floor, I would rather go directly into the Q&A session. Let me tell you. First of all, I will immediately arrange for a Q&A session. After that, and then I will ask how many of you would like to ask questions. I will take into account the number of members wishing to ask questions, and then I will consider the time available. Well, it would not exceed 30 minutes, irrespective of the number of members wishing to ask questions. That is Q&A in total. If very few members are interested, then I won't give you 30 minutes. It may be even less than 30. Say, for example, just 2 of you wishing to ask questions, I won't give each 15 minutes. But irrespective of the total number of members wishing to ask questions, the whole thing won't last more than 30 minutes. I think this is something which is acceptable. Of course, I know in the past there were 15 minutes, but then if there were very few of you wishing to ask questions, it could be, and it should be less than 15 minutes. We want to have a meaningful session, and I believe that I'm not overdoing it by allocating 30 minutes.
If that is my suggestion, can the 6 members not speak? Wu Chi Wai, An Chang, yes? Mr. Jeffrey Lam's microphone. The 30 minutes is for members to ask either candidate questions, 30 minutes. No, the entire session will be 30 minutes. So it doesn't really matter who you ask the questions. Well, but we have to be fair. Say, for example, member A asks questions of Starry Lee, and if Mr. Dennis Kwok would like to answer, then he may do so. So there is fair time for the 2 candidates to express themselves fairly. So the speaking time for the 2 candidates will be equal. So questions first and then a consolidated answer. That's the past practice, and it would be more effective. So just question and then answer. I remember when I was standing in the election for the president, I think that was the approach. It would be easier for supplementary questions, and it will be easier for you to state your best points. Well, I say that let's see how many members would like to ask questions, because if there are too many, it would overrun. Well, 30 minutes, that will end. It will not be more than 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes is all right, unless you think 30 minutes is too long. It's a very important committee. I was quite clear, right? What's your question? So it's question and answer, and then the other candidate can also answer, or you hear all the questions first. A member will ask, and then the 2 will answer. And then another member will ask question, and then the 2 will answer. So 1 question, 2 answers. They'll be short. And that depends on the number of members asking questions. Any other views that you will have to speak? Ms. An Chang? Ms. Tanya Chen has already said it, that under ROP there is nothing about whether there needs to be question and answer session or forum, and it did not happen in past years. But as you know, that it's best to let members ask questions and for the candidates to have a debate. but it has to be very clear whether it should be stated in the ROP. If you create the precedents, well, there will be a lot of panel meetings. Next week there will be elections. And there's half an hour given for each meeting for election of chairman and deputy chairman. And if there is question and answer session, then there won't be enough time. You add rules after nomination has started. Is it appropriate? You know that there is another meeting right after this one. Let members who want to ask questions ask them. And then we hear consolidated answers from the candidates. And if you say, well, you should just compete to press the request to speak button, that may be your way. But we need to be fair. Let's see how many questions there are and then hear consolidated answers from candidates. Anyone else? Dr. Helena Wong. I don't agree with Ms. Chang's suggestion. Well, a lot of students or members of the public are watching the live cast. This is civic education. Well, we are voters. We exercise our rights by wanting to know the views of candidates. The chairman of the House Committee represents the House Committee of the LegCo. So before I cast my vote, I would like to know how the candidate would chair a meeting and what his or her style is. And if you hear all questions and candidates can choose whether to answer or not, then we'd better not have this Q&A session. Within 30 minutes, we'll ask all the questions and then we hear answers from one or both candidates instead of candidates picking and choosing what they answer, because that will not be responsible. Any other views? Well, let me make a decision. Challenge me if you want. There is nothing I can do. There will be 30 minutes. And first, I will ask each candidate to speak. That will take 2 minutes, so 28 minutes is left. And then members will press buttons. And I will see how many members who would like to ask questions. If we need to exhaust the 28 minutes, then the question may last 30 seconds, and then there will be 1 minute for the two candidates to answer, so 2.5 minutes. That means only about 10 people will be able to ask questions. The candidates are from two very different camps. So if you're the first 4 or 5 from your camp, you'll be able to ask questions. Is it acceptable? Even if you don't, that will be my decision. I hope that not too many people will oppose to my decision. Shall we ask the candidates to come forward? People have left. If you would like to ask questions, please press the request to speak button. I have to say this. As per past practice of the House Committee, the Secretariat will make a verbatim record of the question and answer session. Do you agree? There are 11. Anyone else? I'll first ask the two candidates to come forward, out here or where they are. Out here is better.
OK， 得啦得，好你中意啊，唉真係，唔係我諗住即係會。
As you wish. I thought that it would be better if they're out here.
哦 OK， 唔係我以為安排得到嚇點啊？唔係你唔好喝我啊！你對唔住啊！你唔好喝我真係唔好喝我真係你。
Don't shout at me. If you shout at me, I'll be flustered. I have been quite resolute in making that decision anyway. So Miss Lee and Mr. Kwok will stay in their seat. Do we need to draw ballots to decide who is to speak first? Miss Lee, you don't mind starting? You have 1 minute. You don't mind? And let's start with Miss Lee. 1 minute for the introduction. First of all, I thank very much for members who voted for me last time so that I could be the chairman of the House Committee. The House Committee is the deputy president of the LegCo. Apart from chairing the House Committee, I also have to assist the president in chairing the council meeting, and I've actively participated in coordinating amongst the different political groups, and I have talked to Pan-Democrats. Before every House Committee, the chairman and the deputy chairman would sit together, and I have maintained effective communication with the deputy chairman, and I aim at collecting views as soon as possible of different members. In the past year, the operation of the council was smooth, and I thank members for making telephone calls to remind one another of major issues in the House Committee. If I did not get your vote last year, I believe that with 1 year experience under my belt, I will continue to chair the House Committee in a fair and impartial way in accordance with the rules and procedures for the effective and smooth operation of this committee. Mr. Dennis Kwok, you have 1 minute 22 seconds. I thank you all for giving me a chance to answer your questions. In the past year, I do realize that it is very important to have effective communication, whether it's the chairman or the deputy chairman. If there is someone who can represent the camp to communicate with the other camp, to represent different members, to talk to whether it's to talk to members from the Pan-Democratic camp or the loyalists, that would be very important for the operation of the committee. In the past year, well, there are ups and downs of the relationship between the executive and the legislature. We know that it takes time to understand one another. I do believe that a lot of members are very concerned whether the ROP will be changed. And I do think that the crux to improve the relationship between executive and legislature is effective communication. Question number 1, Mr. Ted Hui. I want to ask Ms. Dari Lee, in the past year, your style seems to be quite biased and you deprive members a time to speak and the scope, say for example the 7th of July, an adjournment motion to debate on Mr. Liu Xiaobo's medical condition. You restricted our speaking time and you forcefully cut our time, and you made members to go for a visit of the Liaoning vessel. and you stopped us from having discussions of the Liu Xiaobo motion. Sorry, you have to stop now, Mr. Ted Hui. Ms. Story Lee, and then Mr. Dennis Kwok. As the chairperson, I had to ensure that members would be allowed to speak freely under the House rule, and also to ensure smooth operation of the committee. I drew a line, as I have done always. Well, say for example, in relation to Ms. Mo's motion, I drew a line. After that, 5 members were not allowed to speak. It's just like what I've done before. It's not because of a topic that I adopted a different treatment. In the past year, members were allowed to speak freely, and the smooth operation of the committee was ensured. Mr. Kwok. In the House Committee, I understand that a lot of members would like to take the chance to speak on a topic close to their hearts, and members all had the equal chance to speak. Of course, there are some heated topics. It will be difficult for members to speak calmly, but if you respect this platform, then you'll know that there will be time for you to speak what you would like to say. And if you still believe that there is still an effective mechanism of the House Committee, you'll be given a fair chance to speak.
Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, 30 seconds. The House Committee, by comparison, is calmer, but we still have unreasonable efforts to filibuster. So the question for both candidates: how are you going to balance between filibustering and the right of members to speak? Dennis Kwok, thank you for your question. Mr. Wong, I think you understand that we don't really have much filibustering at House Committee meetings. On the question of filibustering, as to why some members have got many questions and points to raise for a particular topic, they may think that public officers have not answered the questions. Well, on my part, first of all, public officers have done a poor job in terms of lobbying, and then they didn't give us sufficient time to read the papers. That's also a question. And then they didn't answer the questions directly. Though they are questions close to our hearts, members want to do a proper job. So if we are not given adequate information, or if the executive is seen to be blocking us all the time, say for example, the executive would not agree to juggle the items on the agenda of the FC and insisting on having the most difficult one being ranked first in the list, then it's not going to help. All right, time is up. Ms. Starelli. Well, in the past, many members have abused the procedures. They resorted to filibustering. It is regrettable. We need to attend to a lot of issues. The LegCo is a place to scrutinize government policies. There have been motions to adjourn, there have been motions to end the meetings, and then as a result, we have to repeat our discussion of the same topic, and this has been dragging our feet. Some have asked me whether I would favor changing the rules of procedures. My position is clear. For the abuse of our procedures, that should not be allowed. If we can amend the procedures so as to prevent abuse, then I will certainly support such a move. I will be clear about that. But then for major issues, everybody will have his or her own stance. Me too, but I don't think that it means that I will be unfair. I will still be chairing the meetings in accordance with the rules of procedures. Tanya Chen, 30 seconds. Mr. Riley, the candidate, has said that she is in support of amending the rules of procedures. I want to know in what sense the rules have been abused. In fact, you are the majority, we are the minority, you can bully us. If you want to amend the rules, when are you going to do it? I think at least you should put it on hold while the by-elections are yet to be organized. a minute. Well, I hope the public would understand this point. It's always been said that the majority is bullying the minority. Can you recall that we're not able to pass the medical registration amendment ordinance bill because one single member were called for and quorum count endlessly. So just one member could do a lot of damage. I think we shouldn't be doing that. Within 2 hours' time, a member has been asking for the motion or the debate to be adjourned time and again. So it is indeed a blatant case of abuse of the procedures so as to achieve filibustering. Filibustering won't just affect our operation. Ultimately, Hong Kong will be hurt as a whole. So as the chair of the House Committee, I won't be vague about my position in this regard. At the same time, I have to say that despite my position, it won't affect my conduct of the meeting. Dennis Kwok. I'm a member of the Committee on Rules of Procedures. I was the session before as well as the current session. We need to understand whether the rules of procedures can be improved. Now, amending the rules of procedures isn't something that can be done easily. As soon as it has been amended, it will remain in the books for a long, long time. So for our colleagues and the Secretariat will take such amendments very seriously. Now, even if you want to amend the rules of procedures, I hope you will respect the fact that we have the CROP, that is Committee on Rules of Procedures. We examine the details carefully. You may have your own position, but please trust the members of the CROP. Tanya Chen said that the pro-establishment camp is the majority. That's also the case within the Committee on Rules of Procedures. Time is up. Gary Chen. I want to put a question to Dennis Kwok. Would you say that we have the smooth operation of the council last year? Now, if we want to amend the rules of procedures, and it has to go through discussion within the CROP, and if the committee agrees to amend the rules, if you were the chairman of the House Committee, would you agree to that so that we can strike a balance between monitoring the government and also having efficient functioning of the council? Dennis Kwok. Well, for the Committee on Rules of Procedures, if there is a need to have a discussion about changing the rules of procedures, it takes time and we need to work carefully. In the past, what we saw was that for the proposed changes of the CROP, when they went to the full council meeting, usually they were endorsed because at the committee level we're able to reflect adequately the different views across the political spectrum. As to whether filibustering is a problem, it depends on your perspective. For the royalists, you think that it is a big problem. But for us, you have to find out why we have filibustering. This is because public officers would like to rush through an item thinking that they've secured the votes and they won't shuffle the agenda items. The most controversial one is always at the top of the agenda. Your time is up, Mr. Ridley. Well, filibustering affects Hong Kong as a whole. Our competitiveness is being eroded and our administrative efficiency is very low. This is because the LegCo has experienced filibustering in many areas. Doesn't mean that the executive should be held responsible. Allow me to cite the same example. Now, the LegCo as well as the society would like to to make changes to the medical council. Now, there was one member who asked for quorum calls all the time. Now, in fact, all the citizens would like to see things done. If you don't like a particular item, you should just try to stop that item instead of suspending the entire, say, for example, FC meeting. Therefore, filibustering should not be something that you blame the executive. Your time is up. Claudia Mo. Well, I think in the past, the changes were gradual. Now the changes are radical. 6 members have been disqualified. Now they are trying to gain the upper hand while we are vulnerable. Throughout the summer recess, they have been threatening us with changing the rules of procedures. Sterilely, would you agree with me that before we complete the by-elections next March, there should be no change to the rules of procedures? Ms. Mo, I think both of you have had experience of elections more than once in Kowloon West. Have you read my election platform? I think when we stood for re-election, we have already said that we would like to fight for changes to the rules of procedures. This isn't because we saw that 6 members have been disqualified. For Rule 37A, Mr. Ipok Him was very concerned about that. Mr. Tam Yu Chong has also asked for discussion of changes to the rules of procedures on many occasions. So, in fact, we have been pushed to the limits we can no longer tolerate. We would like to have the largest consensus. We hope we can update and upgrade the rules of procedures so as to minimize the occurrence of filibustering. Dennis Kwok. I think it is out of focus as far as this debate is concerned. We talk about changing the rules of procedures. What will be changed? To what extent? I don't think at this stage we are in a position to have such a debate. You need to come up with something more concrete, and you need to justify your proposals. What is to be changed and in what direction? Just now, Mr. Reddy talked about the example of the reform of the Medical Council. I can't agree with her. That was too rushed, and there hasn't been any thorough consultation, and that resulted in a lot of resistance, and that could have been anticipated. Now, a new package has been given to us, and to a certain extent, it is a great improvement upon the previous model. A lot of outstanding issues have been addressed, so we can see that if we are willing to spend time, we can do a better job. Jeffrey Lam, 30 seconds. I have nominated Mr. Lee. This is because she has been fair, she has been efficient, and she's trustworthy, and she can reflect our views to the CS4A. My question is, now many members have tried to have sound bites, or when they speak, they are sort of digressing. So what are you going to do? Because our time is precious. Dennis Kwok. Well, at House Committee meetings, if each try to say less, then it will make a better day. I have had a word with Sterling. Sometimes certain issues need not to be commented by everyone, because emotions will run high, and then we will digress, and then we'll be wasting our time. It isn't an efficient use of our time. Well, to be fair, when we talk about efficiency and the timing, or the time taken, it isn't just the responsibility of the chair. I think everyone here is responsible as to how we spend our time. So as I have said, if we don't say that much, it will make things more efficient. We spent half an hour just now to say whether there should be a Q&A session. If we had spent the time on this Q&A instead, we are now holding the FC meeting instead. Sterling. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your support. As the Deputy Chair has said, when we chair the meetings, we're faced with a lot of challenges. At House Committee meetings, many members want to speak. If you say whether the points have been repeated, of course, sometimes there are repetitions. But of course, if each party can sort things out and try to have someone representing the entire party, it will make things easier. That's the ideal case. Can this be done? Of course, when a member presses the button, I need to deal with the request to speak fairly, and I have to handle it accordingly. Therefore, to make sure that we're efficient, I have to have your understanding. Sometimes I need to draw a line. In particular, when many of you would like to speak and yet we have a lot on the agenda, then we will resort to drawing a line. And sometimes I stop those of you who are repeating your points. And when somebody shouts from his seat, I would also stop him. I'll continue to do so. Dr. Helena Wong. Stewart Lee has been the chair for 1 year. For the Pandemocrats, I think some of us don't think that you have been fair. And then in October last year, on the 18th, we wrote a letter to censure you. Now, if you continue to take up this post, in what areas are you going to seek improvements, thinking that you haven't done it properly last time? Mr. Lee. Well, I chaired the House Committee for the first time last year. There was this problem about oath-taking, the national flag incident, and the members sieged upon me and I couldn't conduct the meeting. And afterwards, some members said that you were not happy with my way of chairing the meeting. I wrote back to you very quickly. And within the same week, I invited you to have a conversation with me.
I remember that members were very busy. Not many people came to talk to me. However, I thank you for your views, and I constantly reflect upon different ways to ensure the members will be able to speak freely without dragging the House Committee meeting for too long. And I am aware of certain criticisms. Sorry. Mr. Kwok, 1 minute. You will have to talk to the chairman and the deputy chairman about matters that you think that are problematic. Say, for example, motions, laws, arrangements with the executive. You need to raise these issues as much as possible. And every week, we can talk to the CS4A. Sometimes these meetings are quite useless because there isn't much to be said, and you can give us the issues for us to talk to the CS4A during our weekly meeting, and I think that will be the role of the chairman and the chairperson. Mr. Albert Ho. Mr. Stephen Ho, where there is a weekly meeting with the CS4A, and I think sometimes the deputy chairman has gone beyond his role to talk to the CS4A, and then the chairperson would make a report of the weekly meeting. However, Mr. Kwok would speak on. Well, you have 1 minute, Mr. Kwok. And I think Mr. Ho was talking about the Holden Chow incident. During that weekly meeting, I said to the CS4A specifically that on behalf of the Pandemocrats, I strongly expressed our views of the approach of Mr. Holden Chow, because there was a very strong view expressed. And I said to the CS4A clearly that his response will be reported to members in the next House Committee meeting. And Ms. Lee was aware of it. However, Ms. Lee may not be aware of what the report content would be, but I have said that I have, if I could express views of Pandemocrats or to the CS4A, I would specifically say that it would be reported in the next House Committee. Ms. Lee. Well, a lot of the Loyalists members asked a similar question. I have strictly abided by my role as the chairperson of the House Committee. Well, the discussion with the CS4A is more or less the same as the agenda of the House Committee. Apart from being the chairman of the HC, I'm also a legislator, and I would not use the occasion to do anything that is not in the capacity of a chairperson of the House Committee. However, the matter was unfolding, and it was folding rather rapidly. And if in the future members would like me to express certain views, I would try to do my best. And yes, there are challenges. Matters of the House Committee will be dealt with on Friday. Other views may be from political parties. Mr. Ray Chan. Well, there is this important ability of the chairperson. You need to be able to reflect on yourself and to admit mistakes. Ms. Lee, if you can ask yourself, what's the worst time you have handled an incident, and you can also talk about the other candidate. I think House Committee meetings are quite smooth. The best one, I can say, well, because of considerations and restrictions of our roles in the weekly meeting with CS4A, I remember that there was one time the CS4A replied immediately. Well, that is the refusal by the then Financial Secretary, Mr. John Zhang, to answer a question, and that afternoon that matter was handled. I remember it vividly, and I hope that I will continue to promote the smooth operation of the House Committee meeting. Well, back to the meeting with the CS4A, I would give an introduction first. I would not for no reason just talk about a matter that is close to my heart or close to the heart of my friendlies. Well, if we're talking about the relations of between the executive and the legislature, that would be a very good chance to address this issue with the CS4A. So I would remind myself that if we are to see the CS4A, if there is any issue that is outside the agenda, I would first talk to the clerk and to my other member, and it has to be pertinent to the relations between the executive and the legislature. Say, for example, change of some arrangements. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Well, the chairman of the House Committee is the second highest person in the structure of the LegCo. Because if the president is not available, the chairman of the House Committee will become the president, will become the deputy chair. Ms. Dari Lee, you're also the chairman of the DAB. The chairperson of the House Committee decides on the rules of the meeting. We expect the chairperson to be impartial. Would you resign from the DAB as chairman? In the past year, you all have given me your comment about my style. And I do think that all in all, the operation of the House Committee was smooth, and I stuck to the rules of procedure, and every member had the opportunity to speak freely. Yes, we have to juggle our different roles because we wear different hats. Well, there is a high transparency in Financial Committee, House Committee, or the Council meeting, because if they see any irregularity, they would immediately raise their hands to speak, and then they would just go to the mic stand to speak to the press. And I do think I have been impartial, and I'll continue to listen to members of different parties, and I will strive to do even better. Mr. Kwok. In reply to Fernando Zhang's question, an important role of the chairperson of the House Committee is to, on behalf of the House Committee, reflect problems of the president's handling of the council. Say, for example, the way the council meeting was chaired. An important responsibility is to speak to the president on behalf of members about how he handled the council, and to reflect to him the problems, because that we might have preparatory meetings with him on Fridays. And I also have the responsibility to ask members what they think about the way the president chairs the council meeting. Last person, Mr. Eddie Ju. The majority should not amend the rules of procedure unilaterally, because that simply doesn't work. So I would like to ask Ms. Dari Lee, would you not seek consent across the spectrum, and you would use your power to amend the rules of procedure as you wish if you have been elected? Sorry, not Ms. Lee. Let's start with Mr. Kwok. Well, first, the way to handle filibustering, in quotation. Will amending the rules of procedure fundamentally resolve the issue of filibustering? I think we need to think about that further. The Committee on Rules of Procedure is very important. We have to respect the committee. The Loyalists have a lot of members, majority indeed, in the Committee on the ROP, and that committee has been looking into issues related to the ROP, and I do think that we all need to respect the committee and let the committee does its work. Ms. Lee, 1 minute. I do believe that whatever my stance towards amendment of the ROP is, it will not become the stance of the House Committee if I am elected chairman. Members have different stance, and I would do my best to strike a balance. The Committee on ROP has been operating continuously. Any possible amendment will have to go through the committee for them to try to forge consensus. I do believe that amending the ROP is an issue that is difficult to get consensus. When, of course, people who think that amending the ROP would deprive members the right to speak. But there are some other procedures that have to be amended. Sorry, you have to stop there. The Q&A session has finished. Now we will have a secret ballot. I now ask staff members to distribute ballot papers and chop to each member.
唔係不記名。
唔係啊，而家係選舉嘛，而家啊。
This is the actual election.
OK， 唔該。嗱，第一次嚇，大家見到。
Let me remind you, on the screen, number 1 is Ms. Dari Lee, number 2 is Mr. Dennis Kwok. First, I will ask you if you've received your ballot paper.
係，唔會打鐘。
There won't be a bell rung.
唔係你30分鐘，我哋3分鐘之後啊嘛，講咗嘅大佬，喂30分鐘冇啊！我如果超時嘅話咧，唔緊要，佢慢慢排冇所謂，有排得嚟差唔多。 如果工作人員同我示意話。
Well, I will ask members if they have got their ballot papers when staff members indicate to me that they've almost finished with the distribution.
嗰度有手。嗰度，慢慢慢慢，唔使心急。你行咗入嚟，我一定。
Take your time.
好嗱，有兩個入咗嚟 ，OK 得。
Two members have entered. Let me ask, those who are present, have you been given your ballot papers? One. Yes.
Sorry， 佢入咗嚟。
I'm sorry. As long as he has entered, it will be fine. All right. 1, 2, 3. So no more ballot papers will be handed out. You may now vote.
好，而家咧就。
There's no need to fold the paper. All right, don't fold the paper. Before you insert your paper into the ballot box, don't leave your seat. We'll start collecting the ballot papers. I'm going to invite Mr. Jeffrey Lam and Mr. Kenneth Leung to get ready to oversee the counting of the votes. They are the nominators.
我洗手間，因為我啱啱解。邊度啊？OK 得。收咗選票嘅同事咧，就集中。
For those staff members who have collected the papers, please come here. For members who have been issued with a ballot paper, have you all put in the papers? I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Voting ends. We have issued 58 ballot papers. We have also collected 58. No, I'm not sure because we have to count the number of ballot papers. Mr. Jeffrey Lam and Mr. Kenneth Leung, you have nominated the candidates, so please come forward. Please try to mix the ballot papers. Number one. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. 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 Number 2. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. 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 Number 2. All right. 58 ballot papers have been issued, 58 have been returned, and 58 members have voted. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Lee got 37 votes. That's number 1. Mr. Dennis Kwok, candidate number 2, 21 votes. So I declare that Mr. Lee has been elected. Please come here to chair the meeting. Let me once again thank members who voted in support of me so that I become the chair again. Whether you have supported me or not in relation to my chairmanship as well as other electrical business are welcome to approach me. Now we come to the election of the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee for the 2017-2018 session. Valid nomination has to be made orally by a member and to be seconded by at least one other member verbally and to be accepted by the nominee. Any nominations, please? Mr. Yip Kin Yun. I would like to nominate Mr. Dennis Kwok. Anybody seconding? Mr. Kenneth Leung. Mr. Dennis Kwok, do you accept? Yes, I do. Any other nominations, please? Let me count 3. Any other nominations for the post of Deputy Chairman of the House Committee? The nomination is still open. 1, 2, 3. Since we do not hear any other nominations, I declare that Mr. Dennis Kwok has been elected as the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee for the 2017-2018 session. Congratulations, Dennis. Let me just remind members that for the 2017-2018 session, if you would like to join other panels other than those who have already joined, please signify before noon on the 7th of October, Saturday, making use of the online system to signify your membership. So please do so by 12 noon tomorrow. Just want to remind you. If there isn't anything else, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.